I'm Aaron Maté, sitting in for Jimmy Dore here with Americans comedian Kurt Metzger, and we're going to talk now about Ukraine, and specifically this guy. His name is Jens Stoltenberg. He's the Secretary General of NATO, and he's having a hard time keeping his story straight about what the Ukraine war is about. Is NATO involved or is it not? Well, here he is with this.
Didn't start in February last year. The war started in 2014, and since 2014, NATO allies have provided support to Ukraine.
By the way, that's a big admission from him. He's saying that the Ukraine war didn't start in 2022 when Russia invaded. He's saying it started in 2014.
Yeah, why is he saying that?
That's correct.
That's crazy.
That's correct. Well, the part he's leaving out is that it started because the U.S. backed a coup in 2014, and then after that, the new coup government encouraged assaults on ethnic Russians inside Ukraine, and so those ethnic Russians in the Ukrainian region of the Donbass took up arms with the help of Russia to oppose the coup government. And then a civil war broke out. And the U.S. sided with the coup government. Russia sided with the rebels. And so, yes, there has been a war going on since 2014. And by the way, the side that the U.S. supported has an element of neo-Nazis. The Azov Battalion, a major paramilitary organization on the front lines of this war since 2014, are neo-Nazi. And so Stoltenberg there is inadvertently admitting what is exactly right, that this war didn't start when Russia invaded. Russia invaded to end a fight that began in 2014 when the U.S. backed a coup. And that's why in 2020, 2 years before Russia invaded, that's when Adam Schiff said that the U.S. aids Ukraine so that we can fight Russia over there. And what Russia did 2 years later was invade Ukraine to end that fight. And Stoltenberg now is inadvertently admitting that. And he's also pointing out that NATO's played a key role from the start since 2014.
Didn't start in February last year. The war started in 2014, and since 2014, NATO allies have provided support to Ukraine with training, with equipment, so the Ukrainian armed forces were much stronger in 2022 than they were in 2014. And of course, that made a huge difference when President Putin decided to attack Ukraine.
So here he is bragging about NATO's involvement in this proxy war from the start, which began in 2014, according to his own timeline. And here is Hassan Mafi. He says, NATO Stoltenberg, the war didn't start in February last year. The war started in 2014. Stoltenberg is right. The war started in 2014 when the U.S. illegally couped Ukraine and U.S.-backed Azov neo-Nazis started to massacre thousands of Donbass citizens. But the thing is, Stoltenberg has a hard time keeping with his narrative, because sometimes he says that NATO's been involved, but sometimes he says NATO's not involved, not a combatant in this war. So here he is speaking recently.
The important thing is that NATO is not a part of the conflict, even though NATO allies provide advanced weapon systems to Ukraine. NATO is not a part of the conflict.
So even though NATO supplies advanced weapon systems to Ukraine, he says NATO is not a part of the conflict. And by the way, even though also the U.S. approves and guides the targeting of Ukrainian forces. So when Ukrainian forces want to target a Russian position, the U.S. provides the intelligence and basically signs off on it. So he's now claiming, though, that NATO is not involved, not a part in the conflict, even though they supply the weapons. And even though he bragged about NATO being involved since 2014.
Is that how... Is that like the standard rules of proxy where, like, you know, like Vietnam, they had China or somebody sent helping them, did they not? That we didn't go to war with those other countries, did we? Or because they would give them stuff, did we?
No, well, Vietnam, the U.S. did expand the war to next door to Cambodia and Laos.
Oh, okay.
But obviously the U.S. did not go to war with any of Vietnam's allies.
But was it largely said like they're the ones back? Because they had to keep the war going by saying like the Soviets would love this.
Yeah, that's
right?
well. Yeah, and the whole point of going to Vietnam, they said, was to stop communism from spreading elsewhere. That was the official cover story. That was the pretext for.
Whenever something looks like it's going to spread like that, the best thing to do is to try to repress it as quickly as possible. That's how they stopped Christianity.
And that's what they say now about Russia and Ukraine. We have to fight Russia and Ukraine, because if we don't stop them there, they're going to take over the rest of Europe, even though they have no ambitions at all in Europe, and even though Ukraine is a particularly unique country because there are millions of people inside Ukraine who identify with being a part of Russia because they used to be a part of Russia historically. And so that's the significance of Ukraine.
But also, people, because I have friends say this to me, like, oh, they're just going to think they can gobble up. He wants to reform the old Soviet Union. And I'm like, so are they communist again? I don't understand.
Exactly.
You know, they're not communists. What do I give a shit?
Yeah, exactly. And here's more from Stoltenberg. Let's see which line he's taking now.
Actually, NATO allies and NATO have been there since 2014, trained, equipped, and supported the Ukrainian armed forces.
So now he's back on. Yes, we've been there from the start, which sounds to me like they're a part of this conflict. And
was he different place? He's not the same event, is he?
No, he's a different event. Here's him at another event, and this is a more.
So he gets his talking points of what he's allowed to say, right? Because I've never even heard of this guy until now.
Oh yeah, he's been involved with the U.S. for a very, very long time.
So he's not in charge of NATO.
No, he's not. No, he's basically an arms dealer and a spokesperson for arms dealing, because he's not like NATO has a military command that he has no role in because he's not a military person. He's just there to basically be the face of arms dealing and hegemony. That's what he's there for. But he says some funny things. So here he is with another interesting line. He's talking about at the recent World Economic Forum, and check out how he says peace can arrive in Ukraine.
It is extremely important that President Putin doesn't win this war, partly because it will be a tragedy for the Ukrainians, but it will be very dangerous for all of us. Because then the message to authoritarian leaders, not only to Putin, but also other authoritarian leaders, is that when they use brutal force, when they violate international law, they achieve what they want.
Wait, didn't we learn that we don't achieve what we want from doing that very thing and losing and then leaving our stuff?
Apparently not. And we're not learning it now when we're occupying 1/3 of Syria illegally and stealing its fuel and wheat. That lesson apparently doesn't apply to the U.S. Because it's a NATO country doing it. So they're exempt, I guess.
Does a sovereign nation mean we like you?
Yes. Yes, it does. The sovereign nation of Ukraine means we like the nation of Ukraine.
Because all those other countries were sovereign nations. Not one of them wasn't.
Syria, last time I checked, is sovereign too, although the U.S. doesn't respect that sovereignty.
And that will be a very bad and dangerous lesson. It will make the world more dangerous and us more vulnerable. And that's the reason why if we want a negotiated peaceful solution to the war in Ukraine, we need to provide military support to Ukraine. That's the only way. Weapons, they are the way to peace.
Well, that makes sense. NATO OTAN. Why is it backwards there?
That's the translation, I guess, for NATO in a different language, I think. I don't know. Or it's just a cool graphic. I don't know. Yeah. Or it's a reflection of his doublespeak. Like it's mirror image projecting back at him. I don't know.
Hey, weapons are the way to peace. War is peace, I believe is the phrase. Freedom is slavery.
Doing live stand-up comedy in Tempe, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, Nashville, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, Cohoes, New York, and Hartford, Connecticut. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets and become a premium member. Get access to all our content.